Hi guys, Matt Hassen here, and it's time to look at my second round game. After my first round, I didn't really have any trouble sleeping. I actually, when I got to the hotel where the tournament was being held, and I went to check in, they actually gave me a free room upgrade. I guess I must have looked like I was going to lose a bunch of money at the casino or something. I don't know, but it was nice. So I had a large room with a couch and everything. The only problem was I woke up kind of early because I still hadn't adjusted to the time zone difference coming from the Eastern time zone. So in the morning I explored Vegas a little bit, and then I actually took a nap before my second round game. So I was feeling good, I was well rested and everything. In this round I was playing Craig Jones from North Carolina. He had a 2268 rating, the original Life Master title, and a 2200 FIDE rating. Uh, Now this game is really strange because I messed up on move 1, which is I don't think ever happened to me before. He played knight f3, and I've been answering that recently with c5, at least for the last few months. But somehow I immediately played knight f6 instead, which, okay, I used to play it, and it's a perfectly good move, but playing an unintended move on move 1 is not really the most brilliant way to start the game. So, but we go into this Queen's Indian with the e3, this variation, and it's, perfectly logical way to play for white because the e4 square is key in Queen's Indian. I have my knight on it and my bishop, and he can just play with his bishop d3, knight bd2, queen c2, and he can, play slowly for e4, and if he goes e5, he attacks me and stuff, so basically the setup is for him to build up to play e4. He can castle and play like this. But against this plan, black has basically two ways to go. He could go with c5, kind of counter-attacking the center to make e4 unpleasant. Or he could do a plan with d5 and sticking the knight on e4. So that one goes kind of like this. And what's interesting is this is sort of the recommended setup in a lot of repertoire books. I know at least two recommend playing this way. But I'm not so sure. Like, Wells in his book gives this game Kempinski Hardison from 2003. And okay, so black has typical Dutch type stuff of lifting the rook and attacking and stuff like that, but you know, um, if I wanted to play a Dutch, I'd play the Stonewall to begin with, and then I wouldn't have this weird b6 move. Like, I'd want my b pawn on b7 and my c pawn on c6, and so this looks weird to me to go d5 to combine d5 with b6. But I mean, okay, the computer says equal game, but it just doesn't seem like the right way to go, considering the c5 move is perfectly good, and you get a game that's more like typical. You get typical strategic middle game positions rather than playing in this Dutch type of a style, which is playable, but not what I'd be going for in this type of situation. So I think, yeah, the c5 move is good, and then uh, the thing to know really about playing c5 is that you have to be careful that white can't play d5 favorably because we never have a c6 move again. Um, so like in this position, castling would be bad because he can go d5, and now taking the pawn back would be bad because, uh, you know, white's just better because black has this weak d-pawn and his king is unsafe. So back here, taking the pawn is wrong, but playing d6 and then if white plays e4, he just has a pleasant advantage. So back in this position, you don't want to castle, but rather play c takes d and follow up with d5. And then the game can basically go two different ways. If white supports his c-pawn with b3, eventually we're going to get a hanging pawn's position, and it's just, a typical computer says equal again, and it's a typical strategic type of middle game where, you try to undermine the pawns, and if we trade off one of them, he'll have a weak isolated pawn, and you just put pressure on the pawns and try and make white's pieces go to passive squares defending them. If you don't, it's typical hanging pawns, and if you don't know much about that, you can, any typical strategic middle game type of book will explain all about those. And the other way to go is just, well, if white takes and then we get an isolated pawn position, another typical middle game position, where you kind of have to know one tactical idea to play this line, and that is if white comes to attack you like this, you play the knight back and we're attacking the d4 pawn, so white has to protect it. But then we have this double attack of knight e4, so we're attacking the queen and also the d pawn. And white has to move the queen, and then we can just take. And, I think black isn't any worse. The database says bishop f4 since we're attacking the knight, and knight f6. And let's see. It says knight e2. Well, it starts to think it's an equal game too. So I think the critical game in this line actually, there's a game, this Adler game, and it goes like this. So the key thing you remember is g6, and knight f4 is not the greatest move, but here black messed up and played queen a5, and then there's this tactic, the knight is attacked and then the king has to protect it, and white's just way better here. It's a winning advantage basically. And what's strange is white just went for a repetition, so maybe they were low on time or something. But back here, black can just play queen a3, and now if white tries the same idea, the bishop's protected, so black is just better. And in this position, black's a pawn up, and I don't know, I'd like to play this position with black. So I think the c5 move is a good way to play if you want a complex middle game. It could go hanging pawns, it could go isolated pawn, but you just get an equal game and you play from there. But I didn't choose either d5 or c5 here. I chose to give check, bishop b4 check, and Grandmaster Lalich in his book on the Queen's Indian actually says that in his experience this is the most annoying move for white when they play the e3 systems against the Queen's Indian. And like I mentioned in the last video, I'm in law school, so I'm basically learning how to be annoying professionally, so I figure I'll play the most annoying move. And now he played there, and the theory says you should take immediately, and then if queen takes, there's this long, well, not that long, but a line that is given in at least two books going back to Geller, who attributes the analysis to Voronkov. So this has been a long time considered how to equalize, and I think, well, the books stop here, but I think we just trade everything off and play a rook to the c-file, and we have, we've clearly equalized. And it's not like a dead position. You could still play on here to win, but I don't know why white would want to play like this. So if he takes with the knight, though, there's actually an Alekhine game from the London 1922 tournament, pretty historic tournament that went like this. And that would have been pretty cool if we followed an Alyakin game from 1922, because in that same London tournament is when Reddy introduced the one knight f3 move, which my opponent used, so that would have been kind of cool. But after knight takes, the idea is just playing kind of like what happens in the game with e5 and a5, and then the idea is to play c6 and b5, like there's this Elvist Vaganyan game from the Erevan Olympiad in '96 that went like this, and after the c6 and b5 move, black's fine, pretty equal again. So I think this just taking immediately is probably a pretty good way to equality, but I played queen e7, and some other players have played this before, and then I take. And what's interesting here is he played b4, which was sort of annoying because I wanted to play c5, like after queen c2, c5, and we see there are a couple of games that were draws here between strong players. Ivkov played it, Panchenko played it. So, but then once he played this b4 move, it sort of made my c5 unattractive, so I had to sort of change plans and go with the e5 and a5 idea again, kind of like in a bogo, or I don't know, whatever you call these typical positions. But it's sort of not cool that I have my bishop on b7 after that happens. And now he took my a pawn, which was shocking because I would think any strong player would play a3 like in half a second, because after he takes the pawn, he has this weak pawn, the weak a pawn, and he's given me the c5 square. So I'm not sure why he did that. It was really surprising to me. And now he attacked my rook, and I had to make a decision where I wanted to put it. You know, I thought about just dropping it back to a7, but here he wants to play his a pawn to a4 and then a5 to get rid of his weakness. So I thought it'd be nice if I could put my rook on a3. But then the question is, well, he can just kick it away by playing queen c1. So I had to decide if I thought his queen was better on d1 or c1, and I thought it was better on d1 because once he goes to c1, he's no longer protecting his bishop or his knight if he pushes his a pawn, which means if I, you know, put a knight here or here or here, I'm going to attack his bishop with tempo at some point. So I thought that it would be good to induce him to unprotect his bishop. So that's why I played the rook to a3. And then he didn't play queen c1, he played knight h4. And here I played g6, but better would have been to activate my bishop, because it's not doing anything on b7. But now that I think about it, if he does this pushing the a pawn might be annoying again. I don't know. So I didn't do that. I just played g6 to stop his knight from coming to f5, obviously. And he attacks the rook, and I go back. And now he made this f4 move, which is just really not a good move. And you know, the computer likes just winning the pawn because I'm attacking his knight, and so he'd have to protect it. And well, he probably wouldn't play like that. What would he do? Maybe protect it this way. He takes. Yeah, the computer likes this a lot. It says I'm basically winning, but Well, I'm attacking his bishop. The thing is, I was worried eventually about a sacrifice here because then he has like his knight can come in and he can push and open up his bishop and stuff, but it's not really anything to worry about, so I probably should have played that move. But I also didn't consider it very long because after knight fd7, I saw that, I'm going to get the e5 square for my knight, and I thought I'd just have a clear advantage after that, so I figured this way it's pretty safe. And, yeah, I gain the tempo on the bishop, and he has to move it away. And then, now here, I spent a little bit of time thinking because I was trying to figure out what his plan was here. And I noticed that he has this idea of bringing his knight into f5, and I thought I didn't like that because I might get checkmated. So that's why here I played c5. Just, so he can't move his knight in, and I figured if he takes, then I take back and I'm protecting my queen, so that g5 is a threat, because back here doesn't work because he can attack my queen and such. But after c5, he played a4, but if he takes it and we take, now that's a threat because the queen's protected. So he didn't take though, and he played a4 with this idea of eliminating the weakness. He just wants to push it to a5 and trade pawns. But he can't do that because I double and put more pressure on the pawn, and he eventually does, but I just trade everything off. And now I probably should have played queen to b4, just attacking him, because, well, I have a check down here, and I can bring my knight this way and attack this pawn. So queen b4 would have been a nice move. I played bishop a6 because I noticed that knight f3 was not a good move, but he played it anyway. And then I'm able to take on c4 and win a pawn, because if he takes back, I take and I'm up a pawn. So, and actually it looks like he's losing this pawn too, because, well, if he brings his knight out, I can attack it and he can't protect it. So, that's interesting. Yeah, but I played this bishop a6, knight f3 takes, and he gave a check, and then just traded everything, but now I'm just up a pawn and winning pretty easily. So I came up with this idea of queen b4, and the idea was just to come around and take his pawn. And there's not much he can do about that. You have a check, and now rather than take the pawn, I saw I could just win his knight, because now when the king moves, the knight's hanging. So he resigned there, and I thought it was really strange because this taking my a pawn was a really strange decision, and then the other one was f4, which, I don't know, it's his knight's just hanging there, so it wasn't a tough game for me because of those moves, but that's what happens sometimes. And he didn't have a very good tournament either. He ended up withdrawing too. But I was sitting at 2-0 after the second round, feeling good because I just beat a strong player with the black pieces, and I was looking forward to the third round later in the day.